Okay, and we are now live on YouTube. Fantastic. All right. Well, our agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about Akka.NET 1.48, some of the changes that are going to go into that. I'm going to give an update on some community standard stuff that I'm working on behind the scenes, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the Akka.persistence updates that Gregorius and Andrew have been working on. We'll also talk a little bit about some of the work Gregorius has been doing getting Artery ready behind the scenes. And then we'll go ahead and go through some other community updates. So yeah, we'll go ahead and try to keep this one a little short today. I'm trying to wear my NDC Oslo sweatshirt here, but unfortunately I've gotten too fat during the COVID pandemic to get it all the way closed. So I have to leave it open here. Um, all right. Well, let's go ahead and dive in and start talking about Akka.NET 1.48 and also some of the other recent work that we just finished. So actually, let's talk about 1.47 first, which we just released 8 days ago. So this was a fairly large pull request that I think everyone on this call and then some had a hand in. So I'm just going to walk through some of these changes real fast. So a couple of the big ones, Andrew, I'm going to talk about a couple of yours. You basically improve the performance of the props.actor of method where we use the new expression. You improve that by about 10%, right? Got it. Oh yeah, so you parsed the arguments out of it rather than compiled it. That makes sense. And then you also added this guy down here, the serialization with transport that now takes a state overload. And you're using that in Akka.persistence at the moment, right? That's excellent. We should take a look and see if maybe if Akka.remote can actually benefit from this too. That'd be another easy win there, if that's the case. I haven't looked to be honest. Oh, okay. Um, so it was just the persistent serialization that wasn't doing that. Well, we just released persistence.postgres 1.4.17 right before this call, like literally 30 seconds before. So that's already using this under the covers there. So let's see a couple of other changes. So Igor, this was a kind of weird bug that we noticed, I think, in the Phobos test suite originally a while ago, where you can't find a temporary actor like when you're doing an ask when you're inside an awaitable context. And you fixed that by changing the way the thread local stuff gets resolved, right? Let's see. And then on top of that, in terms of some of the other fixes that went into there, we released. So this was actually largely, I think, Zibnek who contributed this. We actually have a formal port of all the split brain resolvers that Lightbend open sourced. So we have our original ones that have been part of Akka.net for. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sound didn't go through YouTube. Well, damn. I had this problem again once before. Audio output capture. Let's see. Man, I suck at this. All right. Let's go ahead and do audio output capture. Add existing desktop audio. Okay. That should be going through now, Gregorius. Can you give that a try? Yeah. And because if I check it, it's going to end up in the recording there. Um, but I think that should cut it. Um, Just that I thought I had it in my audio output capture. Oh well. But we should be capturing desktop audio now. In fact, let me just go ahead and double check. Device, yeah. Yeah, I should be capturing all of it. And it might take a minute for this to catch up on YouTube. So does it sound like that's going through? All right. Hmm. Waiting to. I'm listening to the live recording myself. This is so amateur. Yep, I'm listening to the live recording. I still can't hear it. Gosh. Oh well. Um. Yeah, I definitely can't hear you guys showing up. Let me try. So let me try this one more time here. Um. Man, I got this working last time. All right, display capture. That's working fine. Desktop audio. Go ahead and go to advanced audio properties. Active, audio monitoring. Let's see. You know what? Let me go ahead and do monitor and output. Man, I got to spend some time practicing with this. All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and make do with the best we can. All right. So a couple of other fixes that went into Akka.NET 1.47, a couple of bugs with Akka streams, Akka.cluster tools, distributed data, and so forth. Now, in terms of the 1.48 roadmap that we're working on, the big issues that we're kind of taking head on at the moment right now are Akka.dependency injection improvements, and I'll go ahead and walk through those real quickly. Let's see. First is this issue here. So long story short, the service provider props class that we introduced in Akka.NET 1.415, which is when I think we first released Akka.dependency injection, those are actually broken and don't support things like copying over deployments very well. And that's due to some API constraints on the actual props base class, is sort of what's responsible for that. So I took a look at what we did in the original Akka.dii core library, and we used this indirect actor producer to kind of handle all of this. And this turns out to be a much more robust way of handling it because you can pass all this context directly into the base props class, which supports all the copying methods and everything else. The other problem that we ran into, and this is something I noticed, I guess, when I had a moment of nerd rage a long time ago, I went ahead and I noticed that our actor producer setup inside the props class today is extremely weird. Where basically we're using reflection twice. Once to go ahead and create the actor producer based on the incoming type we pass into props. And then the actor producer itself uses reflection one more time to go ahead and actually create the underlying actor. Now, that's somewhat inefficient, and we can probably measure that in our actual Akka.NET benchmarks if we want. So I've decided to fix both of these issues in one pull request here, which is, let's see how bad the damage is. Looks like it's failing at the moment. Great. I'll get to the bottom of that after this call. But basically, I decided to go ahead and address both of these in order to make sure that the service provider props can work nicely inside situations where people need to call, with deploy or with supervisor strategy on it, that type of thing. And also to help rectify some of these changes inside props itself. The biggest one being, if I scroll down here real quick, the biggest change being, if I go and load up the props class itself, I'm just find my comment down here. Let's see. Basically, the biggest one being that we're actually going to take an explicit indirect actor producer here and pass that directly into the props class. So we're only using reflection once to instantiate most of these actors. So you should actually see a fairly significant performance improvement from this if you're in a situation where you need to spawn a lot of actors really quickly, like hundreds of thousands of them. This actually should show up in those benchmarks. I'm going to take a measurement, a before and after measurement of that after this call today, so we can see just how big those numbers actually might be. So that's part of that release. In terms of other major stuff that we might try to include in this release here, we're also taking a look at one other dependency injection pull request that was submitted by a first-time contributor here, say a member. Basically, the crux of this pull request is all about abstracting away the Microsoft.extensions.dependency injection interfaces themselves from the public API surface of a lot of this stuff. We're still going to take a dependency on it, and we're still going to make it backwards compatible with the Akka.dependency injection implementations that are out there. But the difference is that we're going to go ahead and try to basically provide a sort of simple abstraction that sits in front of all of that. Yeah, this one right here, the I dependency resolver, which is going to have its own resolver scope, get service, props, etc., all that good stuff. We're going to go ahead and try to stick this out in front of those classes in order to make it a little bit easier for us to go ahead and try to uh, do things like mock up at a DI container during unit testing if you want, so you don't necessarily have to go and build an entire Microsoft.di container. You can do something really simple instead if you wanted to. And also potentially for use with something other than Microsoft.extensions dependency injection if you want. So these are some of the other changes that we're considering going into 1.48. So 1.48 should be a relatively quick release. We only just released 1.47 8 days ago, but we might release 1.48 maybe as early as Monday next week or maybe Friday. We'll see. Kind of depends on how lucky we're feeling. But that's the kind of major gist of that. On the community standards front, I have not made as much progress as I would like. In fact, the reason why we missed last month's community stand-up meeting in February is because we had a gigantic blizzard here in Texas, and I had no electricity, internet, or running water during that span of time. So we're all back on the same page now. Everything's looking good again here, but this actually ate up a fair amount of time I was planning on spending on fleshing out some more of our community standards. In particular, we want to address issues like, if I scroll down here to our issues area, let me go ahead and pull this up. Promote GitHub discussions. This is a good example. So we haven't really been getting, if we take a look at our discussions area here, we haven't really been getting a lot of people coming in and answering these questions. So like how to operate on all entities in an Akka cluster shard region. Well, we do have some answers here, but no one's actually marked any of them as correct, which would be nice. But there's a couple of issues like that where we kind of want to encourage people to get more involved in answering these discussions, get a little bit more community participation. And so one of the things we're going to do is do things like, if I go to the Akka.net main organization here, I go down to GitHub, so we have like our standard .NET Foundation Code of Conduct. We're going to put some GitHub issue templates in here. We're also going to put a support document that basically explains if you have a problem with Akka.net, where can you go to get help? And that'll include links to GitHub discussions. That'll include links to Gitter chat. We'll also include links to Stack Overflow, and of course, let's say Petabridge commercial support if you need to get a detailed technical answer like immediately. That type of thing. So we're going to go ahead and work on fleshing some more of that out. Those issues shouldn't take long. They just keep getting bumped relative to other other priorities we have inside our system. But I need to really stop letting that happen. Now, Akka persistence updates. So we lost. Actually, it looks like Andrew's back, so we can talk about link to DB. That's good. Gregorius. So since I screwed up the recording of our audio today, I'm just going to go ahead and summarize these real fast, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. We did a massive overhaul of both the Akka.persistence.redis and the Akka.persistence.postgres repositories. In fact, let me pull up both of those while we're here. So the Postgres one, we actually just did a new release of this, 24 minutes ago. And you can see we have all the NuGet packages down here and the symbol packages. Basically, we kind of moved the Akka.persistence.postgres repository out of the Akka.net contrib organization, put it back into the main Akka.NET organization, and we've completely modernized it. So we hadn't done a release of this since, if I go back in time here, I don't think we had done a release of Akka.NET Persistence Postgres since 2018. Yeah, we hadn't done one since not long after we, yeah, August 29th, 2018. So it's been quite a while since we've done that. So as part of this release, we went ahead and upgraded everything to Akka.NET 1.417. We implemented all the Akka.NET Persistence query stuff correctly. And we have another big project here, which Gregorius and a number of other contributors all helped us achieve. So everything should be up and running nicely now. So this plugin is pretty modern. We have some Petabridge customers that are waiting. We're waiting for that release to go and use it. So I'm going to contact them after this call. But then the other area where we went ahead and did a lot of modernization was we went ahead and we completely modernized Akka.persistence.redis. So this plugin was updated to include cluster support. So Akka.persistence.redis will now support Redis clusters, which it did not before. We also went ahead and we disabled a couple of Akka.persistence queries under the covers. I think we got rid of, I'm trying to think off the top of my head here. I think we got rid of the tagging queries, but we added back the ID queries. Is that right, Gregorius? Yeah. So we got rid of the Akka.persistence. Yeah, if I scroll up here. Actually, do we need to do another release to get that out? Come to think of it, we may not. We may not have re-released it with the. Oh yeah, the Akka.persistence IDs. That was on February 9th. Yeah, we got to do a new release of this. So I'll go ahead and key that up today. Um, we went ahead and we added the ability to do the events by persistent ID queries. We added those back. We've removed the queries that do Redis tags because they don't really work very well across a cluster. So this data storage doesn't really support that very well. So we'll go ahead and do a 1.4.17 release of this plugin today that includes those other fixes. So Gregorius, I'll go ahead and take care of that. That shouldn't take too long. But that's all available now. And then we have on our, let's see, discussion here, we have the link to DB updates. Andrew, I'm going to have to repeat whatever you say because, again, I'm an amateur when it comes to streaming on YouTube, apparently. If you wouldn't mind giving us a quick update, I'll go ahead and regurgitate it for the rest of the listeners here. Oh, great. Okay, so your organization's been using it in production for a few months with no problems, but you're waiting on some feedback on the Akka persistence query implementation before you make it publicly available. Um, okay, got it. So, uh, may, would you mind adding to the discussion thread here? Would you mind adding a link to that and just say, hey, users, here's the type of feedback that we're interested in? That way we can go ahead and point them using the Akka.NET Gitter chat and everything to this. Yeah, that'd be great. Now let's see. The last little update that we have is related to Artery and Gregorius. You've done a whole bunch of work here. So first, we're working on getting. Let's see. I think I'm waiting on this to finish running here. Yeah, we've got one more check to go. This pull request here should get the Artery feature branch in Akka.NET completely up to date with the latest work, and it should be rebased on top of all the Akka.NET 1.47 functionality. But on top of that, you went and created 21 individual issues here for actually implementing the Artery transport. Now, question for you, Gregorius: are these sequenced in any way so far? Like, does this say, "Hey, this issue depends on this one. Do this one first"? Gotcha. Um, got it. That makes sense. Well, how much? So I think one thing that would be helpful. if we want to get some other contributors working on some of the auto report stuff, would be to go ahead and describe somewhere in here, like, hey, if you're going to implement TCP framing first, we really need to go ahead and finish this other issue that sits downstream of it, right? Unless you've designed it so that all these issues are standalone, where all these can be imported independently, then that's a different story. Um, okay, so most of it's stubbed out. Okay, good. So we can maybe so in terms of like our next steps here for an Akka.net sprint. Let me pull this up. Our next steps for an Akka.net sprint. I'm gonna try to target the first 2 weeks of April for our next big sprint. Maybe we can try to go ahead and put a bigger dent into some of the artery stuff then. That might be a good target for it. In terms of some of the other stuff that I'm looking at for Akka.net 1.5, the other really big feature I'd like to work on is actually the overhaul of our dispatching system. In particular, rewriting it so instead of using custom thread pools and stuff like that, I'd rather have us use a system.threading.channel where you have one channel that basically belongs to, let's say, the shared dispatcher that most user-defined actors run on, and then a separate channel that the system actors run on, and those both get executed on top of the same thread pool. The other custom dispatchers, like the ones that currently use like fork join dispatchers today, would just get their own channel, but they'd still run on top of the same thread pool. So I'm not convinced there's a lot of evidence that having additional threads is necessarily a benefit outside of a couple of scenarios, like some IoT examples, where people are using a pin dispatcher to go ahead and allow one actor that's responsible for, let's say, polling a buffer that's produced by a camera or some other device really rapidly. I'm not seeing a lot of evidence that basically trying to segment our data store via different threads is necessarily all that effective. So maybe looking at that's another big change I'm considering trying to take on myself as part of the 1.5 sprint down the road. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on, as far as like community updates goes, is I promised on Twitter, I think about a month ago, I was going to start a YouTube series on doing how to build collaborative editing software with Akka.net. And specifically, what I mean by collaborative editing software would be something like Google Docs or Draw.io, where you have multiple people all kind of working together in a web browser to go ahead and edit some shared document that can be passed around. So I still need to go ahead and kind of get around to outlining this and actually doing it. I've been delayed a little bit as a result of a couple of real life things that have kept me away from the keyboard for further than I would like. But otherwise, that's kind of it for this stand up. I don't really have anything else major to report. Um, did any of you guys have any concerns or questions that we should address here? No? All right, that sounds good. Well, we'll go ahead and keep at it. We'll go ahead and try to get 1.48 out along with some improvements around our DI system. And hopefully we can get some people to try out Andrew's Link to DB repository down here, which should offer some pretty significant performance improvements over all the other Akka.persistence. Looks like I forgot to sign out of Steam. Um, hopefully we can go ahead and get some testers to go ahead and report back on that. Well, all right, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time today, for Andrew Gregorius, and Igor, and then for all of our contributors who are watching today. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'll go ahead and drop a link to the Akka.net discussion for the stand-up in the YouTube minutes, and you could go ahead and let us know if there's anything we should be doing better to help support you in your usage